Hello there, welcome back. Welcome back to the Technology Innovation Hub. So let's start the fourth session on the getting familiar with Minikube, right? So let me share my screen. Okay, let's start. Right now, I think we have been creating we just did a deployment and we created a service and we got to know basics of deployment and what is service does to access it from outside the Kubernetes cluster from a browser. So we did those things. Now in this step, let's take a look at another very important concept. As I mentioned, even in the last part of the previous session, I mentioned this one. That is about a repository, right? We can say Docker repository, right? With Docker platform, it's going to be Docker repository. That is the place where our container images are going to store. So repository is the place where images are going to get stored. So we are pulling from repository. So that's why when we pull in the Nginx image, we pull from the official repository. So we have Docker Hub. So likewise, in ECR, Amazon, they have ECR, and Azure, they have their own repositories. Likewise, there are repositories to store these images, right? Now, in our environment, since we are running everything locally, we have the Minikube cluster. So up to now, we have been pulling images from others' official repositories. For Nginx, we pull from them, as I mentioned earlier. But now what we are trying to do, we are trying to compose our own image. Okay. So once we compose our own image, where are you going to store? So that's the question. Now here with Minikube, we can store it locally because we know Minikube cluster works with combination with Docker platform, right? So we can use Docker platform and there's a repository there itself, right? And we can share that one to Minikube cluster. And there's a way we can do that so that inside Docker, with the Docker infrastructure, we can use that repository to store our content images. Because with Docker is right away we can just compose image and store and save there. So similarly, for Minikube environment also we can share the same repository locally, right? So let's see how we can do it. Now, actually, to get an idea about this, in Kubernetes documentation, they are explaining this one how it can be done. Just for you to get an idea, let me show you that one. If we go here, this is what they are telling: pushing images, right? So you can see a comparison table with different methods to store images. So I mean, with Minikube, Kubernetes, they give a lot of techniques, right? So different methods, right? The best method to push your image to Minikube depends on the container runtime you built your cluster. Default is Docker. So we are with default, right? Runtime, container runtime, right? So we are doing with Docker. So we're not even with VM. Right, here the comparison chart. So you have the very first thing is Docker environment command. So that is what you are going to do. Right, supported runtimes only Docker. That doesn't matter for the time being because we are just at the moment just getting familiar with Minikube environment. So this is enough for us. But we have different techniques as well. So you can see the list, right? Okay. So what they are telling is pushing directly into the cluster Docker daemon, pushing directly into the cluster Docker daemon. Because we know within the Minikube itself, there's a Docker daemon running. And on the behind, we have Docker platform also, because you saw to start the Minikube, it asks for the Docker platform, right? So we install Docker separately. You saw it while installing Minikube, right? So it's a prerequisite, right? So we have the Docker platform behind, and we have the Docker daemon also running within Minikube, right? So what we are going to do, the image repository within the Docker platform, we are going to show it to Docker daemon, which is running within the Minikube cluster. That's what we are going to do. So that's what is explained. You can see this is similar to Podman environment, that's true, but only for Docker runtime, but only for similar to Podman environment, but only for Docker runtime. When using the container or VM, drivers, all drivers except none. Yeah, we can run it none, but we are using Docker. By default, it goes with Docker. You can reuse the Docker daemon inside the Minikube cluster. That's what. You can reuse the Docker daemon inside the Minikube cluster. This means you don't have to build your host machine and push the image into the Docker registry, right? You can just build inside the same Docker daemon as Minikube, which speed up the local experiments. That's true. You can just build inside the same Docker daemon. That means your image composing can be done within Minikube itself, right? So because it's going to share the underlying Docker platform as the image repository, right? Because you don't feel the difference then, right? So what will happen when you compose the image right away within the Minikube cluster itself, it is immediately accessible for the cluster. We are composing using the Minikube Docker daemon, right? So it's going to store in the underlying Docker platform, but it is immediately accessible because we are going to share it. So how we are going to share? Using a single command like this to point your terminal to use Docker daemon inside the Minikube. Run this to point your terminal, that is your command line where you are running the kubectl command terminal to use Docker daemon inside the Minikube and inside the Minikube. Run this, right? So once you run this one, right, it will point it to the Minikube daemon rather than the Docker daemon which is in the platform, right? So then when you compose, those images are immediately visible to the Minikube cluster. Okay, but the repository is within the Docker platform. So we will learn it more detail. Okay, so then further they are telling you can run the Docker PS. Now the Docker command runs the current terminal will run against Docker inside Minikube cluster. Yeah, so if you run the following command, it will show the containers inside the Minikube. That's true. Now if you run the Docker PS command, it will show the containers within Minikube, not in our Docker platform. We can check this and see, right? So what they are telling is now if you build it, these things are immediately accessible for Minikube cluster. Now you can build against the Docker inside the Minikube, which is instantly accessible for the Minikube cluster. Instantly accessible for the Minikube cluster. That's true. And there are certain variables, right? And they are telling this image pool policy, put the image pool policy to never and all, because if you keep the default value, it will search for it outside the local repository, but leave it for the time being. Don't worry about those. We don't need to explain everything. So let's do this one a little bit practical and see how it's going to work. So I'm going to open a new terminal because we need to see how it behaves from the beginning, because this setting is valid only for the terminal, right? Only for the current terminal you are working. If you exit from the terminal, the variable values are going to disappear, right? So let's see. Su Docker user, right? So I'm in Docker user. So let's get into our guide, right? So the same explanation I have included a little bit, not in detail. So you can read that. I did that explanation. The very first command is this, right? What you have to do, evaluate, right? So we can see the current value. This is, we are including the current variables. These are the variables, right? You can see the Minikube Docker environment. This will give you the current values on those Minikube settings. So this is what TLS verify one, and this is the Minikube IP, and you can see Docker cert is this part, and Minikube active Docker Minikube. So what we are going to do, we are going to activate these variables using this evaluate command, eval command. So then what is going to happen, the current terminal will get populated with these values, right? So let's run that command. So it says that to point to the shell to Minikube Docker daemon, it is telling, right? Run this command. So I did the same thing. So once you run that command, what will happen? Now Minikube Docker daemon, now the Docker daemon now which is going to use within the Minikube Docker daemon, not the Docker platform, but we install. We install Docker separate now. So normally by default, when you run the Docker command, it uses that. But now it is using the Minikube Docker daemon. Okay. Right. So now, as per the guide earlier, now we can just run the Docker ps command and see what happens, right? Right. So, but in this case, you can see, okay, let me get a total new terminal, right? Because there are certain issues with this Linux environment, right? In Windows, this works perfectly, but it's not. We can say it, right? That's not a valid statement. Windows perfectly working. This is not working, but there are configurations. Okay, so let me again switch to issue Docker user. Right. Right. Now, as for the documentation, we did that, but you saw as for the documentation, the Minikube installation also had problem. So now, as for the documentation, we have run it and we ran the docker ps command. But now let's see the difference. Now, this terminal doesn't have those values. No, these values are not loaded for the terminal. So I'm just going to run docker ps, right? Docker ps. Okay, now you saw that, right? So as per the documentation, what they are telling is once you loaded these values, right? So it will point to the Minikube inside Docker daemon, inside Minikube, right? So Docker daemon running inside Minikube, but loading the values, without loading the values, it gave me the same output. Now, what is this output? This is not the output from inside Minikube Docker daemon. This is the Docker platform normal output. This is the normal command, the normal Docker platform. It runs the Minikube, right? That's what it shows, right? Because our normal Docker platform, our Minikube single node cluster is running there, so it's the same output. But if I do this, let me do it, right? Minikube. Now here, the environment where I have loaded the variable, I am running this command, Minikube SSH. So I am getting into the Minikube environment, right? Okay. Now I am inside Minikube environment, right? Now if I type IP address, it will give me the list of Minikube details. We have seen this one earlier. Right, let me clear that screen. Right. So now I am going to run now ID. I am in Minikube. I am going to run docker ps. Now see what happens. Now it gives me the details, right? So even though I have set the environment, I have loaded the values for that particular using the eval command, but yet it didn't give me the same output. But when I invoke to the Minikube and run the docker ps command, after that, now it's showing me the values, the docker output from the docker daemon within Minikube. That's why I'm seeing these things, right? Now, what are these? The nginx and all these things that we were deployed, right? So you can see those things are there. These are all the containers running within Minikube cluster. Right? That's why now it's invoking the Docker daemon within the Minikube and give me the output. Right? I can build this one. I can say Docker ps. Okay, let's grab this one. So let's check our clusters, not clusters, our ports we deployed earlier. Right? Let's put a grep and run nginx. Now you can see. Now these containers, what we deployed earlier, right? Okay, so those things are running within Minikube, right? Minikube cluster. And now I am invoking the commands from Docker daemon within Minikube. But if I exit from here again, and now if I run Docker ps, right, that's the difference. So now it is not executing the Docker daemon within Minikube. Now it's executing my normal Docker platform, right? So the explanation what it says, if I want to share the images, if I want to use the repository, Docker repository, and if I want to pull images from that Docker repository, as the documentation, what they are telling is I have to compose an image by using the Docker daemon within Minikube. This one, right? So that those images are immediately visible. But if I compose here, those things are not going to be visible because it's in the Docker platform, right? But actually what should happen using that eval command, right? This command, using this eval command, right? It is possible to share the Docker platform to the Minikube environment. That is what it's going to be, right? So, but anyway, let's try this one. even if you're not working, there are other methods to load that. Let's do a small practical and see, right? Okay, let's continue. So now we understood what is the theory behind this eval and variable, right? Okay, now this Minikube is also I ran and fine. So let's do very small practical. What we can do, we will compose a very small image, right? So we will build a small image. So to do that, we can close this one. I have this terminal, right? Right, so let's clear this, right? So let's see. Yeah, I think I have that target folder. Yeah, so this is a small application. In that target, the small means is a Spring Boot one, Java based. When you see the target folder, you know it's a Java one, right? So, and you can see the Java file is there, and I have a small database as well. And I think I have a Docker file, a very small Docker file, right? Docker, let's check the VI. Okay, let's cat that on cat. So this is the content, no big deal. I'm just calling the base image OpenJDK 113, and I want to copy this jar file as app.jar, right? Copy the DB also because this is also a small database, right? And I'm copying these two files to the image, right? And I'm exposing port 8080, and I'm telling the entry point. This is entry point means this is where the container to start running the content. That is the entry point, right? So what's the entry point? Say java.jar, just running this jar file. That's all, right? And just running this app.jar. This is all. This is the command prompt, right? This is the content, right? So it will just run this app.jar file. That's all it's going to do. So the first thing is I need to build the image for this, right? So I can just build the image. Let me go to the guide as well. Yeah. So guide is continuing. So let's continue to build this image, and I can right away say docker build, right? Docker build -t, just give the versioning properly, tagging, right? Tagging with the proper name, right? So I will understand the tagging more detail later because that's a standard like this, the version and colon and the name and the colon and the version like that. Then we can include the repository name as well. And I need to say dot, so just to see our contents are in the same directory as in the target, right? I have the rest of the files in the target directory and the Docker file also in the target directory so that it is capable of copying and composing. Let's run this one. And it's right, it's a very small image, right? So right away ran all these steps and from Alpine, copying the DB, exposing and entry point. So fine. So now we have image, right? So the thing is, now where is this image? Now this image I compose after executing that eval command, no? Eval command. So actually talking, it should be available where? It should be available within the, I mean, immediately access. It should be immediately accessible for the Minikube cluster, no? Because I ran the command after executing those variables, right? Okay, so let's check it. Now I'm going to run docker ps command, right? So do we, no, ps will give you the containers, no? So I will go to run docker images, right? Because I didn't run it, right? Still I have the image, right? images docker images, right? So if I check, my image name was this one, no? SPB2. Yeah, I have the image, no problem. This image, no, I gave SPB2 version 2, no? Yes, SPB2 version 2. So I have the image, right? Image is there, SPB2. But create a 30 or so, no, that is because I have been using this one sometime back as well. This is the name I just gave, right? And but this one now is showing me where in the Docker platform, right? Let's see now, if I go to my Minikube cluster and try to access this, it might not be available because it shows in here in the Docker platform, Docker repository, which is running on the platform, right? So that might not be accessible immediately, right? So to check this, what can I do, right? Now, if I run, okay, let's see, right? I'm going to run that command, right? Minikube SSH. Even without this command, it should be accessible, but let's run this. Okay, now I am going to run Docker images. Right. Okay. Can I see that here? Now this is, I am in the Minikube environment. Can I see SBB2? I have SBB1, right? That is there, right? But can I see SBB2? No, I can't. It's not there. But it's here. It is available here. Now this is the Docker repository. But that's why sometimes this happens. Even if I load the variables, it doesn't show me the image. There is a reason for that. We can correct that problem because there is a IP sharing issue here because I am running the virtual machine and Docker daemon runs in one IP and the Minikube runs in another IP. But don't worry, right? Because we don't need to worry about everything, correcting everything with the Minikube cluster because this is not a production. We are just learning here. So with the actual cluster, there are different methods to share the image repository. So let's do it in those places. Here, we are not going to compare all of those things, right? But we can do it easily, right? If it is not showing the image here, what we can do, we can push it to there, right? We can load it to the cache, Minikube cache, right? That is possible. So let me try it. So there's a command. That's why its output is says like that. This command. I can say Minikube image load image name. So this will push the image from my Docker, standard Docker platform to my Minikube daemon. So it will make it accessible. That means it will push it into that Minikube cache, what is called Minikube cache, right? So if I having this image here, right, having this image in where in the standard Docker platform, if I try to do a deployment, actually it will fail. We can try that out right away without loading this one. Let's try it out, right? Okay, let's try it out. So what we can do, write this. We can just write a simple thing, or we can save. Okay, let's try this, right? So now what I'm going to do, I am going to run this one, right? Now from here, anyway, I can't run. No, I don't have, right? So I'm going to exit from here, right? Let's run it here, but see what will happen, right? We are doing our image is a FPB2, right? FPB2, V2, this image. Port 8003, that is the port that application is using. So if I, that's what happened because even we cannot run here because we don't have kubectl here, right? Because we are in where, right? We are in Minikube environment. I mean, within the cluster, we don't have it. So get out from here, exit from there, right? So what we can do, now we are in the correct place. So now we can run this. This is what happens if I run. Okay, it is telling created, but if I check with kubectl, let's get PO. It says SPB2 still container creating. Let's watch again. This is what happens. Error full, right? SPB2 error. There's an error, and if I check again, it will say we can describe it and see, right? We can say describe port SPB2 system board 2, right? That's right. So what is telling? You can see the output. It says fail to pull the image name, error unknown, error response, daemon pull. Repository does not exist. That's what it says. The image is not existing in the repository by the lookout denied. So that's the reason. That's what happens. That is because when I run the kubectl command, right? The kubectl command right away going to interact with the API server in the Minikube master node, and it's going to pull this image from the known repository. What is the known repository? The place immediately accessible, right? So it's trying to check in within his cache first, within the Minikube cache. No, cache that is not available. Then it's trying to go for the our Docker platform, but it is not visible for him, right? Docker platform repository is not accessible. And that's why even though I have evaluated that environment variable, it still is not accessible, right? So, right. So what we can do without worrying about so much of configuration details, we can simply to make this issue, I mean, to rectify this issue, what we can do from this place onwards, from this place itself, we can run this small command minikube load this command. Let me run this one. So I run this command minikube sdv2 version 2, this command, right? So now what I am doing, the image which is available in the Docker platform repository, I am loading it to the Minikube cache, right? So after that, in Minikube cache, it will be available so that the kubectl will be able to access this image. That's what I am going to do. Right? Even without doing this should work after evaluating the variable. But since it is not working, we are doing a workaround at the moment to make this a success. Let's wait till it copies. Now it's copying the file, right? Yeah, that is what it does. And yes, and kubectl running. And the same way we can, after that, we can run a deployment as well, right? So I think there's a deployment also being tested. Yeah, we can run the deployment. Everything works after that. Let's check it and see, right? Yeah, it might take a few seconds, right? Yes, till it comes. So after that, what we have to do? We have to rerun our not the deployment. We just ran. We didn't do a deployment. We just ran independent. We just create the resource, right? Only the pod resource, and we can say our image, right? Kubectl image name is we gave the name is db2. This is just db1. Doesn't matter. That's a previous practical I have done. And I have to give that name and port 803. So then it will say SPV1 successful running. So it is running the image. Now it is accessible. The image is accessible, right? Because it becomes available in the Minikube cache like this. Once after loading, see, after loading only it becomes available in the Minikube cache. Now I am in Minikube SSH. Now I am taking it, right? Docker images. So that's what. Then it's capable of accessing that one. Then it's running, right? So yeah, so let it and this message also should not always come, right? And I should complete restarting the Docker service may improve performance. That's okay, right? Let's let it finish, right? It shouldn't take that much of time, but anyway, it's taking a little bit of time. Let it go, right? So the next, as the next step, what we can do. Yes, so once it is done, describe, we can check, and this is described in the code, and you can see without any errors. If you go down, earlier you saw error, but now it is pulling successfully, right? Because it's accessible. So after that, the next step is with the same thing, we can try out a deployment, kubectl create deployment, and we are taking the image deployment name, and we are telling pull that same image, HTTP1 v1. What happens, the image will be successfully pulled, and the deployment also will get successfully running like this, HTTP1 app. That's the deployment name. All right, so that is all becoming success because the image becomes accessible for the Minikube cache level, or the we can say repository level with kubectl command, right? All right, so now it should be loaded, but it took some time. That's okay. So we can just run the Minikube SSH command, right? So we can run the Minikube SSH command. And yeah, so now we can check the Docker images. That version 2 should be there in the cache, right? Docker images, right? Yes, now you can see it is loaded, right? Now it is in the vicinity of the kubectl. Now the Minikube can access this one. It is available, right? So it's in the Minikube, we can say in the Minikube repository or cache, that doesn't matter, right? Either way. Okay. So now earlier it was not there. If you check my previous command output, the Minikube cache command, you can see Docker images within Minikube SSH shows only SPB1, right? This one, right? But now it shows the second one as well as SPB2, right? So now very simple. If I run the command again, this one, let's say kube cutter run is 3, right? Get out from here within Minikube, you can't run that, right? So this the command for cutter run SPB3, right? Okay, version 2, the image name correct, and now this should go without any errors, right? Get PO and okay, now almost running because it's available immediately accessible. This is the port now is almost running, and even if I describe the port right, describe PO is PB3, right? Should say successful, right? Successfully assigned SPB2 to Minikube and image v2 already present. That's true because it was there. Already present means nothing to pull, right? So because it's almost we loaded it into the repository. So within the local repository, Minikube was able to find the image. So it just nothing to pull. It just ran that one very quickly. So that's what happened. So that's how we enable a local repository for Minikube cluster to pull the images. All right. So try out the practical. I will upload the document as well, right? I think, all right, we'll stop here for this session. If you like the video, you can put a subscribe. So I'll meet you soon in the next session. Okay. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.